Hey everyone, it is time for another episode of the Get to Know Her show. I am so excited and I want to thank you guys so much for being here. It's amazing that you can take time out of your day and kind of have lunch with us and hang out and meet amazing women. I think we all need more of that. We all need more magic. We need more feel good, anything we can get our hands on right now. It's so important. So thank you for being here with me because you guys sure make me feel good. And I'm very excited to bring our guest on today, Melissa Jamieson. I'm going to tell you all about her, but before I begin, I want to show you my outfit today from our dear friend Brenda Bedome. And I'm wearing this top because Valentine's is coming up, so I thought red would be nice today. And it is so comfy. And I wanted you to notice, look at this little ruching she does here on the sleeves. It's so beautiful. And wait till you see the pants, you guys. These are gorgeous. They're like a houndstooth. And I didn't even notice until I got here this morning that there's the same shade of red in the pants as my top. So I feel like really decked out and matching today and comfy all at the same time. So remember to go to brendabedome.com and use the coupon code Get to Know Her for 21% off, which is so wonderful and generous. And I'm going to put my headset in now because it's time to introduce our guest and bring her on. So first of all, I want to let you know Melissa Jamieson. She is a Canadian-born woman, the child of Jamaican parents who emigrated to England as part of the Windrush generation. Melissa and I have been friends since grade 3. I'm a very lucky girl, and I'm so lucky to have her today to talk to us about her family and her history. And let's not wait. Let's just bring her on. Melissa!
Hey there, Moni. How are you doing?
Good. I love the sun ray coming across.
You know, it's so
beautiful
outside. I think I'm going to go out there and get a walk as soon as we're done today.
Oh, do it. You need to walk to our favorite place, Baskin Robbins.
Oh, yeah. It's a long way.
I know. It used to be closer, remember when we had one at Hopedale Mall growing up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And pizza as well down there. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, those were the days. And you know what I so remember about Baskin Robbins was going there with my grandmother and taking a lick from the ice cream and it toppling onto the ground.
So I wasn't the one that happened to, right?
No, it's so devastating when you're a kid, eh? It's like...
Oh, yeah, devastating. Lots of tears for sure.
Yeah. So, Melissa, I'm so happy you're here today. And I'm really honored that you're coming on for Black History Month to share with us your own personal story and talk to us about your family. I'm really excited about this. And I do want to ask you the question I ask all of my guests before we start. I want to know what little Melissa wanted to be as a little girl. What she thought, what she wanted to be when she grew up. Was it one thing, many things?
You know what? I probably changed what I wanted to be every couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months. At one point, I wanted to be a teacher, like one of our favorite teachers, Mrs. Love, from grade 4 at Woodside Public School. At one point, I wanted to be a doctor, but then I realized I'd have to take biology and dissect a frog, and teenage version of Melissa Jamieson was not up for that at all. So that never happened.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I had a lot of different ideas, but here I am.
Oh, that's so great. You're a multifaceted woman, that's for sure.
For sure.
So, Melissa, in the introduction, we introduced you as a child of Jamaican parents who were part of the Windrush generation.
Yep.
Can you tell us what that is?
Right. So there were all, as you know, Britain had a lot of colonies back in the day, and Jamaica was one of them. And so after the wars, Britain was experiencing a shortage of labor. And so they opened up immigration to people from the colonies. So it was Jamaica, it was India, lots of different countries, and people immigrated. And so it was seen as a huge opportunity Because again, this is pre-internet. This is
Yes.
you didn't have access to all the information. So England was sort of the land of milk and honey, right? And so a lot of Jamaicans migrated to England, and my parents were two of those people. My dad looking for work, and my mother went there to study nursing. So, and
Okay.
at that time, they had to get on a ship, and it was somewhere between 13 to 18 days on a ship without stabilizers, across the ocean to a country they'd never laid eyes on. So, huge adventures. And that's the Windrush generation is between like 1948 to 1971. And so they were part of that. And the only way to really make progress was if you knew somebody who would welcome you when you got there and help you get your feet on the ground. So quite an adventure
Right.
for at a very young age.
Yeah. And what were some of the experiences your parents had in England when they first arrived? Did they ever share that with you?
Oh, a little bit. I kind of had to pull
Yeah.
it out of them because I think it's a chapter that, as much as there were a lot of good memories, there were a lot of negative memories as well. So
Mm-hmm.
they had grown up learning all about England when they went to school in Jamaica, but I'm not so sure that people in England learned a lot about the folks in Jamaica, and I'm not quite sure that they were terribly concerned. So,
Mm-hmm.
it was very difficult if you were Black to get property, to rent a place to live because people didn't want them there. It was so bad. My mother told me that sometimes people, if the neighbors got wind of the possibility that a Black person was going to buy a house in their neighborhood, the neighbors would pool their resources and buy that house so the Black family couldn't move in.
Oh,
So it's quite an amazing accomplishment that my dad's brother actually managed to not only get a mortgage, but to purchase property. And then he rented out the rooms to other Jamaicans, especially family, cousins, siblings, to rent when they got there because lots of places wouldn't accept you. And the same thing happened with employment. So they would, again, back in the day of pre internet, looking in the newspaper for job openings, and they would say yes, yes, we really need laborers. And then when they would arrive and they saw their skin color, suddenly the position had been filled.
oh my God.
So it was very hard. And there's no bank of mom and dad because they're in Jamaica. You're writing by letter, and they didn't have any money to send you anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
that's what they had to deal with. But despite that, it also resulted in a lot of really close family ties, a lot of bonding. Many of those relatives, cousins who are distant in fact, but they bonded and they're still friends, to this day.
Yeah.
And they're really, really tight formed relationships because they needed each other. And I should point out that I mean, I'm fairly light skinned as far as the Black community goes,
Mm-hmm.
but my family spans very, very light skinned to very, very dark skinned and everything in between. And I think that the experiences were somewhat varied among that group. But as soon as you opened your mouth and the Jamaican accent came out, it didn't
Wow.
really matter what the skin color was. There was still discrimination to be had. So it was really tough. It was really tough.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So as a young girl, Melissa, growing up, at what point did your parents share this with you? At what point did you start to learn about Black history, your own personal history, and you know, the big picture as well? When
Well,
was
if you can believe it, I mean, I'm a child of the 70s and 80s,
Mhm.
and there was no Black History Month. There was no teaching.
Yeah.
There was definitely nothing in school. When you opened up a textbook, there were no Black people in that textbook. If you got a book out of the library, I mean, I'm a great lover of Nancy Drew mysteries when I was growing up, but there was
Hmm.
no one in those books that looked like me. So it wasn't even something that was really, we thought about it very much, to be honest with you. And
Hmm.
I think, the turning point for me was when I read the book Roots. I was in my 20s and I knew about slavery, sort of heard about it, kind of understood that was where we came from, but I didn't really know about slavery, like just how horrific and terrible and devastating that was. And, I remember starting the book. And then one Saturday morning, I said to my parents, I said, you know what? I'm just going to stay in bed and read all day. And it was the book Roots that got me in bed all day, reading it from start to finish. And after that, I really had a completely different perspective. And I said to my parents, like, why didn't you talk a lot about this when I was growing up? Because by now I'm about 24, 25 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, well, we didn't want you to go out into the world with that chip on your shoulder, the anger. We hoped that if you, you know, worked hard, studied hard, did well, that you wouldn't have those experiences. And we don't want you going out there angry.
Oh, wow.
So we didn't talk about it. And then, you know, but having said that, in our household, we, you know, because again of the connections that were formed in England and in Jamaica, um, our house was full of parties. There was always
Mm-hmm.
family coming by. It felt like every second weekend there was a party at our house or somebody else's, and we would drive to
Yeah.
Scarborough and Chatham and Brampton and Burlington and all over the place.
Yeah.
Um, so in our household, the food was there, the music, the culture, the people, the diversity was always there. But once that was over, you go back into a world that, you know, there was just a
Yeah.
handful of us. So
Yeah.
it's really as an adult when I started to learn Black history. And now these kids are so lucky to have
Mm-hmm.
it. You know, we didn't have that.
Yeah, that's right. And your parents too. I mean, I know from being in at those parties, I'm so happy. They were good ones.
Yeah.
Your father was self-employed, correct?
No,
Or
actually,
he
he came over and he worked at Goodyear. So there used to
Oh,
be a
okay.
massive factory down in they called it New Toronto. It was like a Tobacco at the time, and my
Okay.
mom was a nurse. Yeah.
Okay, okay. And can you tell us a little bit about that, Melissa? Like that, their work experience, all of that, because I remember a couple of stories you shared with me uh, on that, and also in the neighborhood. Sorry, I dropped my glasses right in the middle
Yeah.
of our interview.
Yeah, we
Don't want to
can't
do
keep
that.
our
I don't.
wisdom
Yeah, I
teeth.
need those. Um,
Yeah.
but just sort of how they were seen in the neighborhood that you lived in, like kind of
Hmm.
what was going on. Yeah.
Yeah. So my mother was a nurse, and again, that was sort of the ticket out
Mm-hmm.
of poverty in Jamaica. If you were good academically in school, that's often the route that a lot of women went. And my mom was one of six children. Of her parents, and my grandmother, whose education, I don't know how far she went, but it was rural Jamaica. It probably wasn't more than grade 8 at the most.
Okay.
Thought, you know, she's doing really well in school. She's a bright one. We're going to invest what resources we have in her. And so she couldn't fail. Failure was not an option, right? And
Right.
she trained as a midwife in England as well, and brought that over here. So it was very easy. And I remember my mom coming to, it was actually her cousin who invited her to come to Canada, saying they're dying
Okay.
for nurses over here, come to Canada. And so they came. And before she even went for a job interview, she got a call from one of the local hospitals saying, could you start working? And she said, you know, well, you know, the trunks haven't arrived from England yet. You know, we haven't really got ourselves into an apartment. You know, call me back in a couple of weeks. Who would do that this day and age, right?
Nice. Yeah.
And then she eventually did end up working at the Queensway General Hospital, which is now, I think, one of the Credit Valley sites, for
Yeah.
about 10 years. And then my dad, so he, I mean, most of the men, it was all manufacturing. So I remember him telling me he had a choice of working at Mack Truck, Goodyear, or Massey Ferguson. And I
Okay.
think, if I'm not mistaken, Goodyear survived the longest out of all of them. I think they closed the plant when he was 2 years short of retirement. So he
Oh,
was
wow.
good. And, you know, and at
Yeah.
the time, and we grew up in Oakville, so there's lots of Ford workers, people who worked at the Ford plant. You know, manufacturing is what a lot of men did.
Yeah.
And so we, you know, where we lived, we had this big, beautiful house on Willowridge Court in Oakville.
Yes.
And, you know, it was quite the accomplishment, the crowning achievement, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, I didn't find out until many years later that my dad was out mowing the lawn one day, and, you know, he's got on his shirt, whatever, and his dress pants. And,
My dad did that too, Melissa. It
oh,
always
yeah.
made me laugh my head off. Or the shorts with the high socks and the dress shoes that were
Oh,
no longer appropriate for work, and a
this is
shirt always with the buttons. I'm like, ever heard of a t-shirt?
Well,
No.
this is it. My dad went to
Yeah.
God rest his soul, went to his grave, never wore t-shirt and shorts. Because again, in Jamaica, being a British colony, when you're a
Yeah.
little boy, they put you in shorts and a shirt. When you get to a certain age, they put you in long pants.
Ah,
And so it was like, you're infantilizing me, trying to make me look like a little boy with
wow.
putting shorts. He never put shorts on again. It was a struggle even to get him into the water to swim. So he's out there in his long pants and, his shirt mowing the lawn. And somebody pulled up and said, I'm just curious, about the houses in the neighborhood. How old are they? And then, the gentleman said, well, how much are the houses going for in this neighborhood? Again, pre-internet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then that man stood there and said, oh, well, you wouldn't know anyway. They thought my dad was the gardener.
Oh my God.
It didn't occur to them that my dad owned the house. And my dad never told me about that. It was through another relative who shared that with me, and he'd probably be horrified if I told the story. But that's how deep it goes, right? Like he didn't want to talk about it, right?
Wow.
And I mean, back in the 70s and 80s, there were probably 4 or 5 Black families in Oakville, and we all knew each other.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So I guess it was a bit of an anomaly to see a Black person who owned a house.
Yeah, for sure. And so I do want to say, I wanted you to go through that because I do want to say from my perception of us growing up together. So there was you, there was me, there were a lot of immigrant kids at Woodside School. We've got 8 friends. For anyone who's heard me talk about this before, we get on, thanks to Melissa, we call ourselves the Woodside Wonder Women, and we have Saturday morning chats at 9 a.m. And if you're not out of bed, Melissa will text you. She did that to me last week. Get up, get up. And yeah, and it's so great because we all really bonded over this, that we all came from immigrant parents. Now, I want you to know something from my perspective. I don't know if I've ever shared this with you before, but you lived on Willow Ridge. So did Melanie Josephs, who's also African and Jamaican mix. Melanie is. And that was a gorgeous street with big homes. And I assumed from grade 3 I met Melanie in kindergarten. I met you when I was in grade 3. I was like, the Black people are the rich people. And my mom and dad, they went to Jamaica for their honeymoon. They traveled throughout Africa. It never even occurred to me that, so talk about, we were all so sheltered in our in a way, and we had each other. And the friendship with you guys, the memories, oh my God, the Cool in the Gang nonstop for birthday parties, like
Rick James Super Freak.
Oh my God, it's so good. So we have to share with people. Melissa just celebrated a big birthday in December. She was the last. She's the she's the little kid in our group, and so Melanie and I decided to walk over to Melissa's. And what started as a walk ended up as music blasting and us dancing in our masks on her driveway, and really, just going back to like grade 2, grade 3. This is how we did things.
Pretty much. Inside we're still in grade 2, grade 3, and you forgot to mention the sub-zero temperatures of that night.
Oh, right, yep. And my bad hip. I forgot to mention my bad hip.
I posted that on my personal Facebook page, and all my relatives are like, boy, they must really love you, Melissa, to be out there in Canada in sub-zero temperatures celebrating your birthday. Because, what else are you going to do for COVID, right?
Totally. But, this is all the stuff we grew up with, Melissa. All of us, our friendships. And I think we're realizing that more and more now with COVID, how there's so many people who have come in and out of our lives in the last, 40 years, but we all come back to each other somehow, and it's so beautiful. We really are sisters.
Well, it's kind of funny you say that, because I think you and I had some conversations as adults, because again, we never talked about race, right? I knew you were not Black. You knew I was not white. We knew it. Yeah. But it's not that we didn't see color. We definitely saw it. But we didn't worry about it. And I think it wasn't until we were adults that we realized that we had some shared experiences as being children of immigrants to Canada. And unconsciously, that's probably what brought us together, right?
Yes.
All of our parents, were coming with that same, want to be able to achieve and, have success for the sake of our children, give them a better life and all of that. And, I think you'd mentioned to me at one point, we couldn't always have the brand new latest pair of jeans, right?
No.
Hand-me-downs were a thing, right?
Yes.
But I mean, they knew how to make sacrifice. This is not, like I said, there's no bank of mom and dad to go to.
Exactly.
You either succeeded or you didn't, and it was all on you. So they were very careful with their finances. They were very disciplined, and they made it, right? So
yeah.
But I think we talked about it, and that's kind of probably why we bonded, because even though we're from different backgrounds, I'm realizing now, especially after everything that happened last summer with George Floyd, that we actually shared a lot of very similar experiences in terms of discrimination and racism, but for different reasons, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. And I think too, it's when you're a kid, you think about how you feel when you go into someone's home. It's like right away you get that feeling. And I remember, like, at your house, at Melanie's house, Rosemary's, Cornelia, all these people who were, all these immigrant children, it was always the same. It was, hi, how are you? What are you hungry? Are you thirsty? What do you want to eat? Sit down. Like, you just felt like automatically part of the family. And it was just so wonderful. We're so lucky. And we were all raised the same. I mean, I don't know about you, Melissa, but do you remember if you had a friend who called and your dad picked up the phone and they said, is Melissa there? Your dad would probably hang up. Like my dad was like, not talking to you.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Or he would just give the person a hard time. Like, and who might I say is calling? And we always like, hi, Mr. Jamieson, it's Monica calling. Is Melissa home today? Like, and same when you called my house.
Oh yeah.
We all had the same values driven into us. And
absolutely.
It's amazing.
That's why you have glam jewels, right? Because you did all this work. I mean, everybody says, I want to have my own business, but do they want to do the work? Because I've watched you from when this was just an idea. I watched you in the times when you had other projects and initiatives that you did. And I've watched you think about this and plan how it was going to happen. Like, we're talking, 20 some odd years of glam jewels? I mean, it's a lot of work, but I can see where it came from, because your parents did what my parents did.
Yeah.
They worked.
That's right. Exactly. And I'm so happy to, over the last 20 years, be on the receiving end of you texting me on like holidays and saying, you're working today, aren't you?
Yeah. Stop that.
You're always,
The jewels will be there when you come back on Monday.
Yes, that's right.
Self-care is important.
Yeah, it sure is. And Melissa, so speaking of self-care, self-confidence, feeling proud, feeling good about yourself, you are our number one girl. I got to tell you.
Really? Like, what makes you say that? I can't imagine why you do that.
Well, when this turns to a podcast, everyone, and you're listening, Melissa just held up a fabulous mug. But you are fabulous, Melissa, and I mean, I know you believe you are fabulous. You love yourself. And I love that about you. I just want to be around you. And when I feel like distressed or beating myself up about something, you are the first person who I think of. I'm like, Melissa would never think of herself this way. Like, get some confidence. And also when I've come to you with problems, you're like, girl, look at it like this. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, good. Like, you're very good at like boosting people up, but you also lift yourself. So tell us about that. How did you learn that?
I have no idea.
Well, you know what? I'm thinking, I mean, your mom saying to, a potential job opportunity, let me unpack my bags and I'll let you know. Right. I mean, she must have.
You know what?
So,
It's funny
yeah.
because there's a lot of this talk out there. I think Facebook is, it's a double-edged sword, right? All these little fluffy memes that are out there about,
Yes.
oh, find your joy and just, all this stuff, right? But I'm
Yeah.
thinking to myself, like, you really you have to talk to yourself in a positive way. I mean, I was raised in a Christian home, and that was part of it because there's a meme going around right now that says, of all the people that there are on the planet, there's all these beautiful mountains and trees and rivers and streams, but God still felt the world needed one of you. Right. And when you
Beautiful.
think about it from that perspective, that's one aspect. But then there's the other aspect. I mean, if you think of where my ancestors came from, my ancestors were slaves and my ancestors were slave owners. As of today, and this is without going through, one of the different DNA testing sites, I'm fairly confident that I'm part Scottish, English, German, Jewish, and African. And there's a possibility that there's some Arawak Indian and maybe Syrian in there as well. My mom's mom had a sister who married a Chinese Jamaican. So there's an entire branch of the family that has a Chinese appearance, right?
Wow.
So when my grandmother passed away and everybody came, one of my university friends said to me, she pulled me over at the side of the funeral. She said, Melissa, who are all these people? Because we had every color of the rainbow. I said, oh, it's just my family. She said, and she's trying to be polite, right?
Yeah.
How does this work? She says, when you go to funerals in my family, we all look the same, Eastern European. How does this work? So I explained a little bit of history, I mean, so when it comes to, the challenges that I have today, I mean, some of them are big, some of them are small, but really, I mean, I have a responsibility in my view to realize my ancestors' dreams. They could never have imagined that I, as a person of color, would be sitting here, doing this live broadcast at my desk in my home, my nice home that my parents, I have to acknowledge and thank them for, the generational wealth that they have provided, is to be able to sit here and pay my bills and, eat good food and dress myself and get an education and 2 degrees, for heaven's sake, and to be able to have friends who don't look like me. My ancestors could not have conceived of this. They couldn't have conceived of it because the people who didn't look like us were the slave owners. They were abusive. They were murdering. They were torturous. They ripped them from their homeland. So how can I possibly allow myself to succumb to negativity and failure given all that? So that's my personal view.
Wow, that's amazing.
But I will tell you too that, COVID, for example, is one of those times where it's been really dragging on people, myself too. I mean, I have I call them the COVID moments where you just realize just how challenging this all is. But then I'm like, okay, but I have internet. I still have the house. I still have food. My groceries can be delivered to my front door. I've got a car. I've got a job. And a lot of people don't have that. So what can I do to help make their experience a little bit better, given that they may not be, in the same boat that I am? And I also will say too that, my mother didn't have a whole lot of patience for pity parties.
Yes.
You
Great.
can have a small pity party. You definitely can cry. You can feel sorry for yourself, but then you got to get up and move on.
Yeah. Don't stay there.
Right. Don't stay there. And if you're staying there, you need to get some help, right? If you can't pull yourself out of it. So it does require a little bit of effort, but I mean, I'm just a naturally resilient person. And I do want to put that in context because I have to be careful, right? Because there are members of the Black community, right, who are in a very different circumstance than I am. Right.
Right.
Didn't have the mom and dad that I had. there are some who would say that my experience has been less difficult because I am a lighter complexion.
Okay.
And there are those whose families did not invest or didn't know how to invest. And, I do not want to downplay the very real challenge of generational trauma, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, so because I've had this great experience and I have this fabulous outlook, by no means should anyone assume that every person who looks like me would have the same outlook or should have it, because they are living a different experience.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. That's so great of you to acknowledge that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
important.
So I share
Wow,
this with you,
Melissa.
but I share that with my brothers and sisters of the Black community as well,
Yeah.
to look at the greatness within them, especially if they're not seeing it right in that moment. Right.
Yes. Yeah. I think that's great. And it's something for all of us to learn.
Mm-hmm.
We can learn so much from you, Melissa. Yeah.
You can learn from
Incredible.
anyone, right? I mean, because the thing is, again, I'm coming from a Caribbean immigrant perspective.
Yeah.
It would be, you might have a very different conversation with my American cousins,
Mm-hmm.
whose parents chose to settle there. Same, my dad's
Right.
siblings, and then I have cousins who have settled in England, right? They're living a very different experience, right?
Yeah.
I have some cousins who are here in Brampton, some who are in Scarborough, some who are, in Brantford. We're everywhere, by the way. We'll find you.
Yeah.
Stand in the street corner and yell, Jamieson, and you'll find one of us. New York, New Jersey, Tampa, Florida, Miramar, Fort Lauderdale, we're everywhere, right? So,
yeah.
But we've all had very, very different experiences.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, that's just from the Caribbean input.
Mm-hmm.
If you asked people who are from different countries in Africa,
Mm-hmm.
trying very hard not to call it just Africa, because there's Ghana, there's Nigeria, there's South Africa, there's, all these different countries. They all have different experiences than what I'm describing to you today.
Right.
And, your approach, your nature, your outlook, your ability to respond to just life is influenced by your experience.
Mm-hmm.
I've been very, very blessed, very, very fortunate to have the experiences that I have that have shaped me and molded me into who I am. But not everybody has that. So.
Yeah, that's so true. Melissa, I wanted to ask you, because unfortunately racism is still alive.
Mm-hmm.
How do you counter that in your life?
Well, because I'm Melissa Jamieson, and as you have reminded me many times today, I am quote unquote fabulous.
Yes, you are.
I constantly am trying to, I have a great group of friends and lots of wonderful folks, Facebook friends and real life friends as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that if people have a question, it's from a place of truly wanting to learn and wanting to understand, wanting to not say the wrong thing. So I continually try to help people understand things from my perspective and potentially another Black person's perspective by putting resources in front of them that they can kind of go away quietly and read on their own and send me a private message and ask, but is this really what this means? And what do you think about this? Because as you know, when you put yourself out there and ask questions that someone might think is a stupid question, you know how the internet can be. People just eviscerate people for asking questions. And there's a lot of Black people who are really tired and do not want to answer the questions, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not one of them. I don't think I can get tired of answering those questions. So I try to help people understand things from the Black perspective to the best of my ability, while remembering that I don't represent the entire Black community. I think it's important, if you are in a position of being an educator, that you ensure that your bookcase in your classroom and in your library is filled with Black people and children just doing ordinary human things, right? It doesn't have to be about slavery and basketball and overcoming the struggle. Black people have parties, birthday parties, and do crafts and write books and invent things and, are scientists and doctors and lawyers and all those other things, right? It's important that when you invite guests to your classroom, try to find somebody who's a person of color. Yes. Because kids don't see that often enough. And it's not just the Black children who need to see that. It is the non-Black children who need to see that as well. Because there's a lot of negative imagery on television surrounding Black people, right? Mm-hmm. We're always getting pushed into the back of a police car. We're the whole George Floyd. I mean, this was a man murdered on television, and it was showed over and over and over and over again to the point where you can get desensitized watching that, right? Yeah. And then there's all the reasons why. Oh, well, if he hadn't been doing this and that and the other. So it's really important to ensure that the positive images are highlighted as much, if not more, than the negative.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. And Melissa, you have a daughter, and you're quite involved with activities at the school with her. You're part of the Orchard community. So you're very much, I love that about you, that you're very much involved. And I think this is one of the wonderful things that I appreciate so much. And I wanted to have you on today because we're so close. And you've always had this like openness about you where I could ask you anything. And absolutely. And I've always asked you anything. And, these are sensitive times and we all need to listen and, not voice opinions so much as to listen to the Black community. And, it's worse than you think, you guys. Like, oh yeah, it's way worse than you think. So it's time to listen and let's not get desensitized to anything. Yeah. That's not how we want this world to be moving forward. And what I would love for you to share, Melissa, with everyone watching is how can we not be racist?
It's tough. It really starts at home. And I mean, I talk a lot about children, but I mean, we were raised in a very different generation, right? I mean, we were just talking the other day about watching Three's Company and Laverne and Shirley and what's that other guy? All in the Family. Oh my God.
Oh God, Archie Bunker.
We used to watch this and laugh.
I know.
I think it's an important exercise to show how far we've come, because I was watching Laverne and Shirley when I think it was Laverne who passed away, the woman who played Laverne. And I watched it looking for the nostalgia and the feel good. And I was like, oh my gosh, they were joking about things that we would never joke about today. Yeah. So I think that's a good trip down memory lane. I think number one, I think it's important to teach your children not to treat Black people like a curious object or something interesting. Don't a Black person's hair, please. Yeah. And I mean, this generation is being taught, you don't touch somebody, hug them, assume they want to be touched in any way without asking permission. I mean, our hair is really cool. It does fun things. We put it in braids, and sometimes we wear wigs, and sometimes we, it's more like an afro, and sometimes it's straight, and that can happen all in the same weekend. Yeah. Right. So it's really cool, but it's, think of that violation that you're reaching out and touching someone because you're curious, not because they want to be touched. So I really encourage people to teach your children to respect people's boundaries, especially if something looks really cool and they want to touch it, right? Yeah. I think that's important. I think we have to diversify our children's bookshelves as well as their toy box. Take a look at the toy box. Do you have any Barbies in there that are not white, right? I mean, because we want to normalize inclusion, and especially in a community like Burlington, although it's way more diverse than it ever was, there's still a very small percentage of people of color as opposed to those who are not people of color. So it's important that people grow up not being afraid of Black people and not being intimidated or thinking there's something, weird or different and that sort of thing. Yeah. So that's a good start. If you attend a house of worship of any sort, try to choose one that includes people of color, that's as diverse as the community we live in. you know, and I mean, if you want to do some reading, there's some great books. Desmond Cole wrote a book. How to Be an Anti-Racist is another one. If you want to learn about the Windrush generation, there's a book called Small Island. I think the author is Andrea Levy. And there's
Okay.
actually an online translator for the Jamaican dialect, which will help you
Oh
figure
my,
out the words if you don't know what some of them mean.
yeah,
Just to get some insight to that Windrush
yeah.
generation. And I fact checked it with some of the family. It's quite accurate. And, you know, some good Black owned bookstores. The Knowledge Bookstore in in Brampton, a different book list in Toronto. If you call them and you want to know, you know, some good reading books to try, they'll help you out.
Mhm.
And I think also just in little things like, oh, for heaven's sake, please don't say all lives matter.
Oh God,
I
I
mean,
know.
we know everybody's life matters.
Yeah.
Black lives matter, white lives matter, everybody's life matters. But when someone is crying out in pain and saying, you know,
Yeah.
stop, you know, persecuting Black people in the way that often happens, it's just not a good thing to say.
Yeah, no,
And-
get that out of the vocabulary.
you know, and I
Yeah.
think too, you know, there's a lot of folks who don't even recognize their own bias, and I'm guilty of it myself, right? So it's not exclusive to one particular race. So I think we have to stop and think about why a particular person or situation is making you uncomfortable, and just be really honest with yourself. You know, you may not even realize that there's some things that you really are having an internal prejudice against, and you don't even realize it. So just, you know, stop and think when you find yourself in a situation. Why am I feeling so uncomfortable? Why is this getting me angry? Why am I upset about this? Why don't I like it? And it'll come to you eventually. Just plain old self-reflection.
Yeah. Self-awareness, that's the step one.
Step one.
For sure. Yeah. And that takes a lot of time to get there for some people. So
yeah,
absolutely. if you're self-aware, you're
it's
that's
like
big.
I said, sometimes it's quite innocent. So, you know, they don't know. I mean, there's people who say you should know, but you don't always know. You don't always know. So
that's right.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, Melissa, this has been so educational and really great. And you know what? We have to tell the people what you do for a living, because I'm sure everyone wants to know, which is really great. Yeah.
So I'm an allied health professional. I work in the community. I work with people who've been involved in collisions or had accidents or slips and falls, try to help them get better. And, you know, I work with a very diverse community. So as much as I'm here to talk about Black history and our struggles, I mean, like one thing I've learned is there's a lot of other communities that are experiencing very similar struggles. And so it's helpful to learn from them as much as they might be learning from me.
That's wonderful. I love it. Melissa, I'm so grateful for all your time today. And can you, I know, doesn't it go quickly?
I'm like, what are we going to talk
Isn't
about
it crazy?
for 45 minutes?
Yeah.
I didn't even get to my story about when I came off the GO train.
Yes. Okay. Please share that story. We got time for that story. That's
I mentioned earlier how growing up, there was maybe 5, maybe 10 Black families in Oakville. I think the population was around 50,000 at that point.
Yep.
And I'll never forget the day I took the GO train down to Toronto to go to Caribana, which I didn't go to till I was like in my 20s. Don't tell anybody. And so I got off the GO train in Oakville at the main station, and all these people of color came off the GO train. And I was like, who are all these people and how come I don't know them? And that's when I realized the population of Oakville, Burlington had exploded, and the diversity exploded. And now I don't know everybody in the community.
Oh my God. That's so wonderful. That was the one day you got to see all of you guys all together celebrating and getting off in Oakville. Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Okay, so we're going to hop on for a little Instagram after party. I'm not letting you go forever yet. And
apparently not.
Maybe when, it would be fun to talk about on Instagram. I'm always interested in the different Black-owned businesses that you support in the community. And let's talk about food, please. Yeah, because you know my favorite dish.
I know. Self-care. I didn't get the lunch I promised myself before we started talking. So.
Oh, geez. All right, my darling. Okay. Thank you so much, Melissa.
All
This has
right, you
been
take care.
amazing.
See
All
you on the
right.
other
And
side.
actually, before we go, when things go back to normal, I would love to do Destination Jamaica with you.
Negril, it's a
Yeah,
date.
because
We're
I
on
think
it.
I've only met maybe 1/16 of your family here in Oakville. I got to meet the rest of them now. And
We have to do a
like,
round the world tour for that. I forgot to
yeah.
mention the ones in China and Germany. So yeah. Oh, and
Oh my
Switzerland.
God.
I forgot Switzerland.
Well, we'll have lots of places to stay in Germany.
That's right. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, because that's right. Your family is
Yeah.
in Germany too.
Yeah, we can do it all.
Awesome.
All right, my darling. We'll see you
Mwah. See you
soon.
soon.
Okay. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Melissa is amazing. How lucky am I to have a friend like that who I can ask all the silly questions to and just, get into some really good conversation. She is amazing. So thank you. I hope you are celebrating Black History Month this month and doing whatever you can to make this world a better place, because we need it. And we went over some really great points today, and I'm so glad we had Melissa to guide us along. And as usual, before I say goodbye, please check out brendabadome.com, our amazing sponsor who makes these beautiful clothes I'm wearing. And remember to use the coupon code GET2KNOW HER for 21% off of your order. And if you are watching us on YouTube, I would love it if you would subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day and keep showing the world your sparkle. Bye for now.